Before there were mirrors, there was still water, a pond, a puddle, a basin left out overnight. The first reflection a human ever studied was probably their own face staring back from some dark, quiet surface. And whatever that experience was, it mattered. Because from that moment forward, our species has been obsessed with capturing reflections and making them portable. The oldest known manufactured mirrors are about 8,000 years old, discovered at Çatalhöyük in modern-day Turkey. They were made of obsidian, volcanic glass, polished to a surprisingly effective shine. These weren't decorative afterthoughts. They were found in burial contexts, placed near the dead, suggesting that reflections carried spiritual weight. Seeing yourself was not trivial. It was connected to something deeper, maybe the soul, maybe identity, maybe the boundary between the living and whatever comes after. Ancient Egyptians and Mesopotamians moved to polished copper and bronze. These metals could be hammered flat and buffed until they returned a recognizable image. Not a great image, mind you. Bronze mirrors gave you a warm, slightly distorted version of yourself, like looking through tinted glass. But they were cherished possessions. Egyptian hand mirrors often featured handles carved as Hathor, the goddess of beauty and love, which tells you something about the cultural role these objects played. A mirror was a sacred tool, not just a grooming aid. The Greeks and Romans refined metal mirrors further. Some Roman mirrors were silvered on the back to improve reflectivity, a technique that hinted at what would come much later. But metal mirrors had hard limits. They tarnished, they scratched, they never quite showed you what you actually looked like. Now, here is where things take a long and curious detour. Glass had existed for thousands of years, and people understood that glass could be made reflective. Romans even experimented with backing small pieces of glass with lead or gold leaf. But these early glass mirrors were tiny, dark, and wildly expensive. The technology to make flat, clear, large sheets of glass simply did not exist. Glass was blown, and blown glass is curved by nature. Flattening it into something useful for a mirror required techniques that wouldn't mature for over a millennium. The real breakthrough came, as so many material innovations did, from the island of Murano in Venice. By the early 15th century, Venetian glassmakers had developed a method of blowing glass into large cylinders, cutting them open and flattening them while still hot. They then coated the back with a tin mercury amalgam. The result was the first truly effective glass mirror, clear, bright, and large enough to show a full face or more. These mirrors were staggeringly expensive. A fine Venetian mirror in the 15th century could cost more than a painting by a master artist. The French court reportedly spent more on mirrors for the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles than on any military campaign of the era. That might be exaggeration, but it captures the genuine scale of the expense. Venetian mirror makers were state secrets unto themselves, and Venice threatened them with death if they tried to leave the island and share their craft. France naturally tried to steal the technology anyway. In the 1660s, the French finance minister, Colbert, orchestrated a covert operation to lure Venetian glassworkers to Paris. Several came. At least 2 died under suspicious circumstances, possibly poisoned by Venetian agents. Industrial espionage at its most literal.
If you enjoy these videos, do check out our mobile app. Treehorn makes audio shows like this every morning. We also cover tech news, politics, entertainment, and more. Treehorn is available on both iPhone and Android. Now back to the show.
But even the Venetian method had a serious problem. The tin mercury amalgam used to coat the glass was toxic. Workers who silvered mirrors breathed mercury vapor daily. They developed tremors, lost teeth, suffered neurological damage. The phrase mad as a hatter comes from a related mercury exposure in hat making, but mirror workers suffered just as badly.
In 1835, the German chemist Justus von Liebig developed a process for depositing a thin layer of metallic silver onto glass using a chemical reaction. No mercury required. The mirror reaction, as it is still called in chemistry classrooms, produced a brighter, cleaner, safer reflection than anything before. This is essentially the mirror that hangs in bathrooms today, refined, but fundamentally unchanged. And once the modern mirror existed, something very old finally became ordinary. For thousands of years, a clear reflection had been rare. Now the human face could be reproduced with startling precision, available every morning, hanging on a wall. But familiarity can hide how strange a mirror really is. A mirror creates the illusion of space where there is no space. You look at a flat surface and see a room continuing beyond it. Inside that room is another version of you, moving when you move, watching when you watch, occupying a place that appears real but cannot be entered. We know the physics. Light strikes the glass, reflects from the metal behind it, and returns to the eye. But the explanation does not entirely erase the experience. The image is still you and not you. It has your face, but no body of its own. It disappears when you leave. It exists only in relation to your gaze. It is not hard to understand why mirrors became connected to souls, spirits, prophecy, and death. They seem to show a second world layered directly over this one. That idea appears again and again in folklore. Haunted mirrors, magic mirrors, mirrors used for divination, mirrors covered after someone dies, reflections that move on their own, and characters who step through the glass into another realm, a portal hidden inside an ordinary object. In that sense, mirrors were an early kind of screen. Not electronic, of course, but a flat surface that displayed a convincing scene. It framed space, reproduced motion, and created the illusion of depth. The difference is that modern screens usually show us somewhere else. A mirror shows us the world we are already in, reversed, and places us at the center of it. Maybe that is why mirrors have never felt completely neutral, even after we learned how to manufacture them, even after they became cheap and commonplace. They kept some of their old mystery. What is also easy to miss is how profoundly mirrors changed science.
Without flat, reliable mirrors, there are no reflecting telescopes. Newton built the first one in 1668 precisely because he could shape and polish a concave metal mirror to focus light without the chromatic distortion of lenses. Every major observatory for centuries relied on ever larger mirrors. The ability to see the cosmos depended, quite literally, on the ability to see yourself. Mirrors also enabled the laser, the periscope, the spectroscope, and countless instruments that shaped modern physics, chemistry, and medicine. The simple act of bouncing light in a controlled direction turned out to be one of the most versatile tools in all of science. And it started with a still pond, a creature curious enough to stare at its own reflection and wonder what it was looking at. That wraps up the show for today. Man, that was a doozy. Our ancestors used to try to comb their hair by looking at a rock. I want to walk through a mirror portal now. Until next time, friends.